Prayer is a vital resource. So I prayed this morning, what should we talk about today? And the Holy Spirit said, prayer is a vital resource. So I had to pray some more about that. And I've got some scriptures here to clarify this. Now, if something is vital, it means you can't take it for granted. It means it's necessary. Here's the definition of vital. It's absolutely necessary or important. It is essential. This means that you really don't want to go forward in anything without prayer. It's a necessary, vital component of every aspect of your life. Personal relationships, finances, ministries, anything that you have. Prayer is a vital resource. And not just at the beginning, but at every step of the way. Now let's cover some scriptures with this. Now Jesus, he prayed heavily before all the important events in his life. Prayer is vital to conducting life in obedience and so that you can remain in the Holy Spirit. So even if you're called to do something, you still have to pray in each phase of the process so that you are not doing it of your own will and you are doing it of God's will. Okay, so let's look at some examples. Jephthah, they came to him, they said, we need you to come help us. We're being oppressed by the enemy. Jephthah, come down out of the mountains and fight for us. And he said, why should I do that? But he also prayed. He prayed first so that he knew that God would be with him. And of course, he famously made the pledge to sacrifice the first thing that came out of his property when he returned. Okay, and then Gideon prayed. An angel appeared before him. He said, Gideon, mighty warrior, stand up and come. But Gideon said, well, I want to know that this is God first. And he even asked God to show that it was God by putting out the fleece 2 different mornings. Okay, King David had once went out, he prayed, and God told him to go and remove the Philistines from this valley. That God wanted the valley to belong to the Hebrews and not to the Philistines. So David had rode in there and they conquered them. Now some time passes and the Philistines move back into this valley and reoccupy it. So David, he already knows that it's God's will that the Philistines not have the valley, but that the Hebrews have it. But David prays again. He said, God, do you want me to go in again and remove these people? And the Father said, yes. But listen, David prays again. He said, should I attack the same way you showed me last time, coming in through the front? And God said, no, they're expecting it this time. So you see, even now, so David's going to pray at every phase of the way. And so then he says, well, how should I attack? He said, you're going to come through this grove of cedar trees. And David said, okay, and when should I attack? And God said, I am going to go before you. When you hear my army marching on the tops of the cedar trees, then you go out and attack. So see, David prayed at every phase of the way. And this is true for us. He understood that prayer is a vital resource. And prayer is necessary. It is essential to success in everything you do. Because even if God called you to do it, and you don't pray, now you're outside of God. You're doing it without God. You are omitting a vital resource. So let's look at how Jesus prayed. In Luke 6:12, and it came to pass in those days that he went out into a mountain to pray, and continued all night in prayer to God. And when it was day, he called unto him his disciples, and of them he chose 12, whom also he named apostles. So look at that. Jesus prayed all night. Who should I choose? Father, let me do this according to your will and not to my own. Let me choose the disciples that you choose, not my own. Important side note, of those 12, he chose Judas. And something bad came out of that. So it's really difficult to judge by appearances, but to make a right judgment, you really have to be in the Holy Spirit, because only the Holy Spirit can make a right judgment. Okay, Luke 22:31. And the Lord said, Simon, Simon, behold, Satan has desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for you, that your faith fail not. And when thou art converted, strengthen your brothers. So here Jesus is praying for someone else. This is an important time. The devil wants to come against Peter. Jesus knows that Peter has a failing in that he denied Jesus 3 times. Now the devil's trying to lay out a claim, and so Jesus has interceded in this case. Okay, Luke 18:1. And he spake a parable unto them, to this end that men ought always to pray and not to faint. So again, prayer is so vital. When terror comes, anything that should make you faint, prayer is what happens instead. So you always ought to pray so that weakness will be bound against or bound away from you, so that your prayer forms a wall between anything that might destroy it. Okay, in Matthew 26:41, Jesus says, "Watch and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the body is weak." So here again, we're wrapping it all up, showing that the challenge is to be in God and not out of God, to be in the spirit and not in the flesh. Because the flesh is weak, it has a tendency to faint, it has a tendency to fear, it has a tendency to satisfy its own desires to the detriment of life. But the spirit is strengthened by prayer. The spirit is guided by prayer. And this is why prayer becomes such a vital, necessary, absolutely important component of every event you will undertake in life. And not just each event at the beginning, but at every step of the way. If you're a singer and you get 100 invitations, you need to pray about each invitation and not only about, should I accept them all or should I accept the ones I want? You need to pray carefully and often. This is the man from Modesto reminding you as always to pray or be defeated.